when staying damages you more than living. A clinical breakdown of silent psychological harm in marriage. This material is not therapeutic in tone, it is corrective in intent. It does not aim to make you feel understood, it aims to prevent long term psychological alteration. When an individual remains in a chronically misaligned marriage, the psyche does not stay neutral, it adopts. These adaptations are not temporary, they become structural. Prolonged emotional suppression produces personality distortion. Chronic attachment to an unviable bond results in identity erosion. Delayed separation causes damage that often persists after divorce. This is not about morality, it is about consequence. Proceed with the understanding that inaction is also a psychological decision. Staying in a psychologically unviable marriage produces structural damage. Viability loss is ignored in favor of endurance. Many marriages continue long after psychological viability has ended. Functioning replaces connection. Routine replaces intimacy. Endurance replaces health. At this stage, staying does not preserve stability. It produces slow psychological injury. This injury is cumulative, not dramatic. It often goes unnoticed until personality changes are established. Why it happens? Survival systems prioritize continuity over accuracy. The human psyche prioritizes continuity. When disruption threatens identity, finances, or social structure, the mind chooses endurance, even at psychological cost. This survival adaptation delays action but accelerates internal damage. What feels like strength is often prolonged threat tolerance. Viability withdrawal directive. Internally issue this directive turns. This relationship is no longer psychological viable. Continued emotional investment is no longer permitted. Do not negotiate with this statement. Do not soften it. Why this works? Attachment systems disengage only after viability is revoked. As long as the bond is classified as potentially protective, the psychic remains invested. Correct withdrawal prevents further adaptation to harm. Psychological viability can expire before divorce. Endurance often replaces health. Survival favors continuity over accuracy. Prolonged tolerance causes damage. Viability withdrawal is corrective. Chronic self suppression results in personality deformation. The self is gradually reduced to maintain peace. In stagnant marriages, individuals suppress expression to avoid friction. Needs are minimized. Opinions are filtered. Emotional presence is rationed. Over time, this does not preserve harmony, it produces a smaller psychological self. This reduction becomes habitual and later permanent. Why it happens? Adaptation through self reduction. The psychic adapts to persistent relational threat by shrinking expression. This reduces immediate conflict but trains the nervous system to abandon authenticity. Prolonged self suppression reshapes personality traits. Self suppression prohibition rule. Until separation or genuine relational repair occur, you are not permitted to suppress emotional truth for the purpose of maintaining surface stability. Each act of separation is logged internally as psychological cost. Why this works? Rules interrupt automatic adaptation. When separation is reclassified as harmful rather than virtuous, the psyche stops reinforcing contraction. Containment prevents permanent deformation. Self suppression preserves peace short term. Long term suppression deforms personality. Adaptation occurs through reduction. Authenticity is abandoned to survive. Prohibition halts deformation. Prolonged stagnation produces learned helplessness. Initiative is abandoned. After repeated emotional non response, many individuals stop attempting change. This is not acceptance, this is conditioned withdrawal. Motivation decreases, agency erodes, hope becomes theoretical. This state spreads beyond the marriage. Why it happens? Conditioning through non response. The brain learns from outcomes. Repeated effort without response conditions the nervous system to conserve energy. This produces learned helplessness, not emotional maturity. A small microaction, helplessness, interruption directive. Identify one domain where initiative has been abandoned due to expected non response. That withdrawal is no longer permitted. One corrective action must be taken weekly until agency return. Why this works? Helplessness reverses through action, not insight. Behavioral reactivation retrains expectancy system. Agency is restored through enforced engagement. Non-response conditions withdrawal. Helplessness replaces initiative. This is conditioning, not acceptance. Withdrawal spread across life. Forced action restores agency. Staying too long restructures future bonding capacity. Emotional availability declines. Individuals exiting long stagnant marriages often report difficulty bonding later. They remain guarded. They anticipate neglect. They limit vulnerability. This is not preference, it is relational injury. Why it happens? Adaptation to emotional scarcity. The psychist adopts the absence by lowering expectation. This protects against disappointment but damages future intimacy. Prolonged scarcity rewires bonding threshold. A micro action. Expectation damage audit. Internally accesses. What expectation have I permanently lowered to survive this marriage? These reductions are identified as injury, not wisdom. Why this works? Reclassification prevents injury normalization. Once recognized as damage, these adaptations are less likely to transfer forward. Summary: long stagnation injures bonding capacity. Guardedness becomes default. Scarcity lowers expectation. Adaptation feels permanent. Recognition prevents transfer. Delayed exit increases psychological recovery time. Waiting makes living harder. Contrary to belief, staying longer does not simplify exit. It increases fear, identity diffusion, and dependency on structure. Living later requires undoing deeper adaptation. Why it happens? Adaptation solidify with time. Temporary coping becomes structural. What was once survivable becomes embedded personality change. Recovery complexity increases with duration. A microaction. Delay cost statement. Internally state each additional year of misalignment increases recovery cost. This statement is actuarial, not emotional. Cost framing activates executive function. The brain disengages faster when long term cost outweighs short term comfort. Staying longer increases exit difficulty. Adaptations harden with time. Recovery becomes complex. Delay carries cumulative cost. Cost awareness restores clarity. Children absorb psychological dysfunction even in silence. Emotional absence is actively transmitted. Avoiding conflict does not protect children. Children do not learn from explanations, they learn from emotional atmosphere. Emotional disengagement and quiet resignation transmit dysfunction daily. Silence disguises harm, it does not neutralize it. Why it happens. Internalization of regulation pattern. Children's nervous system calibrate to the home's emotional baseline. What is tolerated becomes normal. This becomes their relational template. What you can do. Transmission interruption rule. You are not permitted to model emotional resignation as normal. Any day emotional absence is enacted in front of children is logged internally as psychological transmission. Why this works? Transmission persists only when behavior is unconscious. Responsibility interrupts normalization. Silence still conditions children. Emotional atmosphere teaches regulation. Absence becomes relational template. Modeling shapes future bonds. Awareness interrupts transmission. Moralizing endurance delays necessary psychological action. Suffering is reframed as virtue. Endurance is labeled loyalty, patience, or responsibility. Clinically, this reframing masks psychological injury. Endurance becomes justification rather than wisdom. Why it happens? Morality as defense. Moral narratives reduce guilt but block corrective action. What feels right may be psychologically destructive. A small action. Morality suspension directive. Just ask only one question. Is this pattern producing psychological health or psychological harm? No moral language is permitted. Why this works? Health based evaluation bypasses justification. Truth becomes visible once virtue is suspended. Endurance is moralized. Morality hides injury. Suffering is reframed as virtue. Justification blocks action. Health based framing restores clarity. Some harm is loud, some harm is silent and cumulative. A marriage does not need conflict to cause damage, it needs prolonged misalignment. When identity erodes slowly, continuing is no longer neutral. At that point, staying is not patience, it is participation. Psychologically, integrity is preserved only through accurate action.